About a week or so ago, I made a video talking about the importance of gameplay loops inside of video games and kind of like the tips and tricks on creating them from what I've been learning. Because if you don't know, I've been working on game development since I really found out about it and could actually start it in like 6th grade is when I really started with it, and then did it for a few years and then took like a year break, and now I'm kind of coming back to it. But during that time when I was actually trying to develop games, I had one big issue, which was I never planned at all, and I made a video about that as well. And I've been studying a lot, okay? I feel like I'm in college with the amount of stuff that I'm just like looking over, and to be fair, it kind of is, it's like college, because I was on the Unity Learn website, which has a whole bunch of resources for like tutorials and courses and everything you need to learn about like programming and game development. And one of these courses was paired with USC, and it's a university in California, and I was like, okay, cool, let me check this out and see what they have to offer, because it's like, okay, how to make a game course. And so I was going through it. I didn't actually like follow along with it, like doing what they said, but I was taking notes and kind of wanting to get the overall process. And as I went through the whole thing, I'm like, I have an alright idea of what I'm supposed to be doing here. The big issue though is that I feel like it just wasn't structured well. Like when I'm wanting to make a game, this isn't really the best resource for me, because it's not like a step-by-step, like, okay, this is the first thing that you do, then the next thing. It's more like, okay, here's like an overview of everything. Here is how you start it, and then okay, here's some other things that we're going to be mentioning later, and it's kind of like sprinkled in throughout, and it's like, okay, we're going to start talking about this here, and we'll finish off with it like a couple lessons after, basically. And I'm like, I don't really like how this is structured, because I feel like it just doesn't give me like a good thing to look at like outside of the course. Like I wanted to see kind of like a guide, like a vague like guide or outline to getting started making video games. And so I took everything that I learned from that course, I took a whole bunch of notes on like the main points of it, and I'm like, okay, let's put this into more of like a guide format, so that myself and anybody else who sees it, then you can take this information, I can take this information and kind of just like build a game. And before I officially get into it, I just want to say basically everything from this is from that USC collaborational course. So if you're interested in seeing the full detail that has to offer, go check that out. So the overall design process overview for a game here is there's mainly 4 big parts, okay? And that is to generate ideas, formalize those ideas into a prototype/prototypes. 3rd step is to test the prototypes. And then the 4th step is to revise and then repeat. That's just the general overview of what you need to do in order to like make a game. And now let's get into the pre-production, which is basically the entire part of the entire video here, because I haven't gone really past this. I just spent today mainly like reorganizing it to be put in like pre-production, and I'm gonna do a production one and then like maybe like a post-production one. Keep in mind, I have not really used these yet. I'm just taking what I have learned from this course and putting it into this video for me to look back on and for you to look back on. And I'll probably have like timestamps below if you're interested. But yeah, so let's get to it. The first step in creating a video game, okay, is you have to come up with an idea. Obviously. So you want to sit down, come up with some ideas for the game that you want to make, okay? Just kind of start thinking of like creative things, maybe consume some entertaining media that inspires you, that kind of thing. Then once you kind of have an idea starting to form, you want to start thinking about scope. Scope is basically how much time and effort you're going to be putting into the game. Like how big is this game going to be looking, okay? Imagine it like a sniper scope. Like you zoom in, what is like the amount of space that you're looking at? Like how big is this game gonna be? Is it gonna be a 0.5 zoom where it's like kind of far out, kind of like a big scope, or is it gonna be like 4 times scoped in, like you see that this isn't gonna be a big game, this is just, we got a little thing to work with here, we're just gonna build that kind of idea. One thing you want to keep in mind while doing this is you need to remember the resource constraints. You see, none of us here have unlimited time or unlimited money, and so you want to keep that in mind. And as you are coming up with these ideas, think like, okay, I don't have unlimited time and money, I need to keep the idea small or simple, or just fitting within a deadline. And while thinking of this stuff, I need to remember, okay, I need to get creative with the solutions that I might need to implement later on, because I'm not going to have infinite resources here. You have these constraints, and these constraints are what will make your game truly special because you start getting really creative with it as you go about building the game. I know this from experience for sure. The next thing you want to focus on is, I believe it's called concentric design. I didn't really get the best, definition for this. That's another thing that this course kind of, I felt like it lacked. It kind of felt like it lacked a lot of just straight up like definitions. This is what it means. It kind of just like gave kind of long drawn out explanations, and I'm like, for a college, you think it'd be more like direct, specific type of stuff, but I'm just going off what I have here. So you want to focus on concentric design, I believe is what it's called. And basically what this means is for every revision that you're making as you're, testing and revising, that kind of stuff, it needs to get you closer and tighten the scope, narrow it down to getting you closer to the finish. So every time you revise something and, you're continuing moving forward, you're not like expanding outward more and more, but instead you're getting more and more narrow in until you're, boom, done with it. Next up, you may want to actually create like a full like game design document, which, here's like a basic one, which I found from the course, and basically it goes like this. Come up with a game summary, a short summary of what your game is going to be about. Then list off like the main features, like the main mechanics of the game and how that's going to work. Then come up with like how the gameplay is going to go, maybe like a little bit of like the gameplay loop, that kind of stuff. Then think about like music. How is music going to play a part? Is it going to be like, what can you do with the music perhaps? Like, I don't know exactly why that was specifically pulled out, but hey, music can play a big part in games. It's something to keep in mind there. And then lastly, think about the art style. How are you gonna all bring it together? Maybe you have like some reference pictures, that kind of stuff. And this all kind of goes with everything that I've been saying previously, which is, actually coming up with the ideas and putting it all like on paper or on a Google Doc or something like that. And doing a game design document is very important for this. Now we actually kind of get started here, and this is with the prototyping phase. Prototyping is there to test ideas quickly and cheaply because, like I said, resources are finite. There are a couple different ways from what I've been learning here that you could be doing like prototypes. One way of doing prototypes is like, okay, take one feature and just make a mini prototype just trying that out. For example, say jumping or just like player movement overall as like a mechanic. Try a couple different ways to get like the jumping mechanic or just overall like player movement feeling right. You could try this where it's just, okay, I'm just doing like this one like scene in Unity, for example, to really like test out how I can go about making proper like a nice fun jump mechanic, and maybe make multiple scenes to try out different prototypes of how you can go about doing the specific jump. Then once you have different prototypes done for different features that you want to do, you can start combining them into one, and that's where you really start to see your project coming to life. And it really just depends on how exactly you're wanting to do this, but basically from my understanding for prototypes is you want it to be one thing for the prototype to really just like test out, to answer one question that you might have. For example, the way that you may want to go about specifically prototyping is like this. First, write down a list of questions that you want to have answered. For example, can I make the shooting in this game feel good? Then choose one of the questions that you have, and you can do a couple of things here. First off, you can either just make like a non-digital prototype, like get a piece of paper and like kind of write out how you think it would go about, like how you could go about doing it, or you can just skip ahead to like the next step, which is creating a digital prototype. And in the digital prototype, that's where you want to have it show the main mechanic that you want to have answer the main question that you have. For example, we'll say, can I make the shooting feel good? Then you make a prototype figuring out how you want to make the shooting actually work. Next up, once you start doing these prototypes and putting things together, you want to get together your vertical slice. You may have heard this before, but it's actually very simple if you're unsure of what it is. A vertical slice is a small self-contained chunk of your game that sees the player experiencing all the major systems working together. For example, think about it like this. Say you have a bunch of different layers, okay, and these are the different mechanics and systems and features of your game. Say there's music, and then the art, and then, I don't know, like just like the basic mechanics and all this different stuff, and it just like stacks up to make like a layer cake. The vertical slice is when you basically take a slice out of that and it's all these things combined into one. Kind of think of it as like a pilot for a TV show episode. The first episode before the full, show gets, greenlit and funded. It's a small chunk of like what you are potentially able to see moving forward with the show. Same thing applies for video games, kind of like thinking of what is a good way I can form a chunk that encompasses the feel of my game and how everything works together. Lastly, we have the backlog, basically what you want to set up before going into full production and just getting into the good cycle of getting work done. There are a few steps for the backlog. First up, you want to create between 4 and 8 categories. Apparently the preferred category amount is 6, and these are going to be like the main functions, main tasks of the game. These are like the main things that you want to like really go at, that, you know, combined really make up your game. Then for each of those categories, you want to create 20 to 30 tasks. Like I said, I didn't get these numbers, like I'm not making these numbers up. This is just what the course had talked about, so that's what I'm putting here. Like I said, I haven't really gone through it yet, but I wanted to kind of just like explain it and get it out and make a video about it, showing off what I've been learning here. So yeah, write out 20 to 30 tasks for each category. Then you want to go through each of those tasks and rewrite it as a player story, which I'll talk about in just a second. Then after that, you want to measure each of these player story tasks and give them a number between 1 and 3. 1 being the most important, 3 being the least important. Then with that, you want to estimate how much time each of these tasks will take. Will it take 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8 hours? Like I said, these are just the numbers that were given out. They said if it's anything less than 2 hours, still just put 2 hours, because you just always want to assume it's going to take longer than you think. And if it's 8 hours or more, you may want to consider splitting it up into multiple tasks. It shouldn't be more than 8 hours for a single player story task. Then moving forward, you just get to choose what you're going to start working on. Here's an example of how this would work out when you're writing it. First off, come up with the main categories. For example, if it's like a platformer, it could be player movement, enemy movement, and then like a death and respawn type of functionality. Then you can break that down. Take the player movement category, break it down into a few tasks. You can say, I want to implement running, jumping, and wall climbing. And then to rewrite that as a story, it could be something like this. Players can run left and right, jump when standing on solid ground, and players can cling to walls and move vertically as well. That's kind of like a slightly like more in-depth, like step-by-step type of guide to getting started with making a game. This is what I've been learning from this course, which you can check out. It's completely free on the Unity Learn website. And, you know, this is just the overall kind of process from what I've seen for pre-production. And, you know, there's more to go into it. Like once you actually get to production, there's like different ways of going about it. And I'll probably make another video talking about that then once I actually start reorganizing it in the way that I can best, you know, utilize it. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to scroll down right now and subscribe for future videos, and to leave a like if you did like this video. I hope you enjoyed it or got some value out of it and can actually take this to go and, you know, maybe make your own game. And I'm going to be trying this out very soon to see if it really works the way I explain it. If not, like I said in the guide itself, revise and try again. But yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video.